Noreen and I were sitting on our couch, flipping through the wedding invitations that had just arrived from the printer. 3 years of loving each other, and we were finally about to make it official. I remember thinking that our wedding would bring my family closer together. My mom had always favored my younger sister, but I figured this happy occasion would change things. Then my phone rang. It was my mom, and her voice sounded strange. She said I needed to come home immediately to discuss something important. I thought she wanted to talk about the seating arrangement. I had no idea she was about to ask me to destroy everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. And if you believe families should support each other during the happiest moments, hit that like button and subscribe. Now let me take you back to that night. My name is Marcus. I am 30 years old, and I work as a software engineer at a tech company in Seattle. But I grew up in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, in what most people would call a typical middle-class family. My dad passed away from a heart attack when I was 19. It was sudden, unexpected, and it shattered our world. After that, my mom, Linda, raised my younger sister and me on her own. My sister, Kristen, is 27 now. From the moment she was born, she was the apple of my mother's eye. Mom always said Kristen looked just like Dad had, his smile, his eyes, his mannerisms. Maybe that is why she held on to Kristen so tightly after he died. Whatever the reason, Kristen grew up getting everything she wanted. New car at 16, college tuition fully paid, an apartment my mom helped finance after graduation. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through college and paid my own rent since I was 18. I never complained. I figured that was just how things were. I learned to be independent, to not expect anything from anyone. Then I met Noreen. It was 3 years ago at a technology conference in San Francisco. She was working a booth for her marketing firm, and I walked up to ask about their services. But honestly, I forgot every question I had prepared the moment she smiled at me. Noreen is 28, originally from a small town in Montana. She has this warmth about her, this genuine kindness that you can feel immediately. But what drew me to her most was her strength. Noreen lost both her parents in a car accident when she was 16. She had no siblings, no extended family willing to take her in. She worked her way through high school, earned scholarships, put herself through college, and built a successful career all on her own. She understood what it meant to fight for everything you have. We started dating, and within a year, I knew she was the one. Last fall, I proposed to her during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast. She cried and said yes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We spent the next 8 months planning our wedding. We booked a beautiful garden venue outside Seattle, sent out to save the dates, chose our colors, our flowers, our menu. Everything was falling into place. That night when my mom called, I drove to her house alone. She had been specific about that. Just me, no Noreen. I thought maybe she wanted to discuss a surprise for the wedding or talk about family matters privately. When I walked into the living room, my mom was sitting on the couch with a tense expression on her face. Beside her was Kristen, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I sat down across from them, already feeling uneasy. Mom started talking in circles at first, asking about the wedding plans, making small talk. Then she finally got to the point. She said, "You know your sister just broke up with Tyler last month, right?" I nodded. Kristen and Tyler had been together for 2 years. I heard they split up, but Kristen and I were not close enough for her to share details with me. Mom continued, "Kristen is devastated. She is heartbroken. And having your wedding right now, watching you be so happy while she is suffering, it is going to hurt her deeply. I think you should postpone the wedding, at least for a year. Give your sister time to heal." I sat there in silence, certain I had misheard her. Postpone my wedding because my adult sister went through a breakup. I looked at Kristen, waiting for her to say this was ridiculous. Instead, she burst into fresh tears. She sobbed, "You do not understand, Marcus. Watching you get your happily ever after, while I just lost the love of my life, I cannot handle it. It is not fair. Why do you get to be happy when I am in so much pain? I tried to stay calm. I explained that we had been planning this wedding for 8 months. We had deposits down, contracts, signed, invitations already sent out. Our friends and family had made travel arrangements. This was not something we could just push back on a whim. Mom's face hardened. She said, if you really love this family, you would make this sacrifice for your sister. Noreen will understand. She seems like a reasonable girl, unless she is the type of woman who puts herself above family. That last comment stung. I stood up, told them I needed time to think, and left. The whole drive home, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I did not know how to tell Noreen what had just happened. I did not even know how to process it myself. When I got home, Noreen was waiting up for me. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. We sat down together and I told her everything. Every word my mom said, every tear Kristen shed, every guilt trip they tried to lay on me. Noreen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at me and asked simply, what do you think we should do? I told her I did not want to postpone our wedding. This was our day, our commitment to each other. Kristen's breakup, while unfortunate, had nothing to do with us. We should not have to put our lives on hold because my sister could not handle seeing someone else happy. Noreen squeezed my hand. She said she would support whatever decision I made, but she also said she did not want to start our marriage by giving in to unreasonable demands. If we caved now, where would it end? Would we have to postpone having children if Kristen was single? Would we have to hide our happiness forever to spare her feelings? She was right. We decided together that the wedding would proceed as planned. I would call my mom in the morning and explain our decision calmly but firmly. The next day, I made that call. I kept my voice steady, respectful. I told my mom that I loved her and I loved Kristen, but I could not postpone my wedding. It would not be fair to Noreen, to our guests, or to us. I hoped they could understand and support us. Mom did not take it well. Her voice turned cold, then angry. She called me selfish, said I only cared about myself and that woman I was marrying. She said I was tearing this family apart. Then she delivered her ultimatum. She said, if you go through with this wedding, your sister and I will not be there. You will be choosing Noreen over your own flesh and blood. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, but I held my ground. I told her I was sorry she felt that way, but my decision was final. She hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next week, things got worse. Mom started calling our relatives, aunts and uncles and cousins I had not spoken to in years. She told them her version of the story, painting me as the villain who abandoned his grieving sister for a woman who was tearing the family apart. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts from people telling me I should be more considerate, that family comes first, that I was being cruel to Kristen during her time of need. I tried explaining the truth to a few of them, but it was clear they had already made up their minds. Mom had gotten to them first, and her narrative was the only one they believed. Then Kristen took things to another level. She posted a long message on Facebook. She did not use names, but it was obvious who she was talking about. She wrote about how some people choose romantic love over family, how some women come into families and destroy them from the inside, how she was abandoned by the one person who should have protected her. The comments poured in. Her friends rallied around her, calling me heartless, calling Noreen a homewrecker. Some of them even found Noreen's profile and left nasty comments on her posts. They called her names I will not repeat. They told her she was selfish for not postponing the wedding, for not caring about my poor sister. Noreen found those comments one evening. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. She did not say anything. She just handed me the phone. I read through the comments, and I felt a rage building inside me that I had never experienced before. I wanted to call Kristen and scream at her. I wanted to post my own message exposing the truth. I wanted to fight back. But Noreen stopped me. She wiped her tears and said, "Do not lower yourself to their level. We do not need to fight them. We just need to live our lives and be happy. That is the best response we can give. I took a deep breath and put down my phone. She was right, but it did not make the pain any less real. That night, I made a decision. I sent a message to both my mom and Kristen. I wrote, "I have made my decision. The wedding will happen as planned. If you cannot support us, if you cannot respect Noreen, then you are no longer invited. I will not allow anyone to disrespect the woman I love." After I hit send, I sat by the window and stared out at the night sky. My heart was heavy, but for the first time in weeks, I also felt a sense of peace. I had drawn a line. Now I had to live with the consequences. Mom never responded to my message. Neither did Kristen. The silence was somehow worse than their anger. At least when they were yelling at me, I knew where I stood. The silence felt like being erased from existence. What I did not expect was my grandmother's reaction. My mom's mother, the woman who had bounced me on her knee as a child, who had taught me to play cards, who had always snuck me extra cookies at family gatherings. Mom had called her crying, telling her how I had betrayed the family. And Grandma believed every word. She called me 3 days after I sent that message. Her voice was cold in a way I had never heard before. She said, "Your mother is heartbroken. How could you do this to her? How could you choose a stranger over your own family?" I tried to explain. I told her what really happened, how Mom asked me to cancel my wedding because Kristen had a breakup, how Kristen attacked Noreen online. But Grandma cut me off. She said she had heard enough excuses. She said if my mother and sister were not welcome at my wedding, then she would not be coming either. After that call, more relatives followed suit. An aunt in Portland, 2 uncles from my mom's side, a cousin I had been close to growing up. One by one, they called to say they would not attend. The guest list that had once included over 100 people was shrinking by the day. I felt like I was losing everything. Not just my mother and sister, but my entire family, my entire history. Every childhood memory, every holiday gathering, every birthday celebration, all of it felt tainted now. I started wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe I should have just postponed the wedding. Maybe keeping the peace was more important than standing my ground. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my hotel room. Noreen was staying in a separate room, following the tradition of not seeing the bride before the ceremony. I was grateful for the solitude because I did not want her to see me like this. I pulled out an old photograph I had brought with me. It was a picture of my whole family from when I was 12, taken at a beach vacation. Dad was still alive, his arm around Mom, both of them smiling. Kristen was sitting on his shoulders. I was standing next to Mom, grinning at the camera. We looked so happy. We looked like a real family. I stared at that photo for a long time, and then I started to cry. Not quiet tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that I had been holding back for weeks. I cried for my dad, who would never see me get married. I cried for the family I thought I had, the family that turned out to be conditional. I cried for the little boy in that photograph who believed his mother would always love him unconditionally. I did not hear the door open. But suddenly Noreen was there, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I tried to pull myself together, embarrassed that she was seeing me fall apart, but she just held me tighter. She whispered, "I know this is hard. I know how much you are hurting. But tomorrow we start our own family, and I promise you our home will be filled with love. Real love. Not the kind that comes with conditions and ultimatums." I turned around and held her. We stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just breathing together. Eventually my tears dried. The pain was still there, but it felt more manageable now. I was not alone in this. I had Noreen, and tomorrow she would become my wife. The wedding day arrived with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. The garden venue looked beautiful, decorated with white flowers and soft lighting. About 60 guests were present, mostly friends of ours and colleagues from work, plus a handful of relatives from my dad's side who had never been close to my mom and did not buy into her narrative. I stood at the altar, my heart pounding. The music started, and everyone turned to look at the entrance. and there she was, Noreen, walking toward me in a simple white dress that made her look like an angel. She was alone. No father to give her away, no family to walk beside her. Just Noreen, strong and beautiful and brave, walking toward our future. I was so focused on her that I almost did not notice when the garden gate opened again. But the murmur from the guests made me look up, and I could not believe what I saw. My grandmother was walking through the gate. Behind her were two of my aunts from my mom's side. They were here. They actually came. Grandma walked straight toward Noreen, and for a terrifying moment, I thought she was going to say something hurtful, but instead she stopped in front of my bride, her eyes glistening with tears. She said loud enough for everyone to hear I was wrong. I only listened to one side of the story. I let myself be manipulated by anger and loyalty to the wrong people. I should have talked to you, Marcus. I should have listened. She paused, then looked at Noreen. May I walk you down the aisle, dear? You should not have to walk alone. Noreen burst into tears. She nodded, unable to speak, and took my grandmother's arm. Together they walked toward me, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain this time, but hope. When they reached the altar, Grandma placed Noreen's hand in mine. She looked at me with those familiar eyes, the eyes that had watched me grow up, and said, Your father would be proud of you, Marcus. You chose love over fear. You chose integrity over convenience. Never forget that. The ceremony continued. We exchanged vows, exchanged rings, and when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I kissed Noreen while our guests cheered. It was not the wedding I had originally imagined. My mother was not there. My sister was not there. But somehow it was perfect anyway. After the ceremony, Grandma pulled me aside. She told me what had changed her mind. Apparently, she had run into an old family friend at the grocery store, someone who was connected to Kristen on Facebook. This friend showed Grandma the post Kristen had written, the comments attacking Noreen. Grandma was horrified. She realized she had been fed lies, that my mother had twisted the story to make herself and Kristen the victims. Grandma said I almost missed my grandson's wedding because I was too stubborn to seek the truth. I will not make that mistake again. I hugged her tighter than I had hugged anyone in years. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had not lost my entire family. A piece of it had come back to me. Noreen and I spent our honeymoon on the California coast. We rented a small cottage near the beach and spent our days walking along the shore, cooking meals together and talking about our future. But I would be lying if I said the pain disappeared completely. In those first few weeks of marriage, I still thought about my mom and Kristen constantly. I wondered if they regretted their choices. I wondered if they even knew Grandma had come to the wedding. Part of me wanted to reach out to try to mend things. But another part of me knew that healing could not happen until they acknowledged what they had done. Noreen was patient with me through all of it. She listened when I needed to talk, held me when I needed comfort, and gave me space when I needed to process alone. She never once complained about the family drama I had brought into our marriage. She just loved me steadily and unconditionally. Slowly, I started to heal. I focused on building our life together. We decorated our apartment, established our routines, made new friends as a couple. I threw myself into my work and earned a promotion. Noreen's career was thriving too. We were building something beautiful, something that belonged to us. About 6 months after the wedding, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from my mom. Her handwriting on the envelope made my heart stop for a moment. I opened it with trembling hands. The letter was short. She did not apologize directly. She did not admit she was wrong, but she wrote that she missed me, that the house felt empty without the hope of seeing me, that she wished things had not turned out this way. She ended by saying she hoped that someday we could talk again. I read that letter several times. Part of me wanted to call her immediately to forgive everything and go back to the way things were. But I knew that was not possible. Too much had happened. Too much trust had been broken. Going back was not an option. The only way was forward. I talked to Noreen about it. We decided together that we would leave the door open for reconciliation, but we would not chase it. If my mom truly wanted to rebuild our relationship, she would need to take real steps, not just vague expressions of missing me. She would need to acknowledge what she did, apologize to Noreen, and demonstrate that things would be different. As for Kristen, she never reached out. She deleted her Facebook post at some point, but she never apologized, never explained, never tried to make amends. I heard through relatives that she had started dating someone new and seemed to have moved on with her life. I hoped she found happiness. I truly did, but I also knew that our relationship might never recover, and I had made peace with that. A year after our wedding, Noreen told me she was pregnant. I remember the moment perfectly. She handed me the positive test with tears in her eyes, and I felt a joy so overwhelming that I could barely breathe. We were going to be parents. We were going to have our own family. As I watched Noreen's belly grow over the following months, I thought a lot about the kind of father I wanted to be. I thought about my own childhood, about feeling like I was always second to Kristen, about working twice as hard for half the recognition. I made a promise to myself and to my unborn child. I would never play favorites. I would never make any of my children feel less valued than their siblings. I would love them equally, support them unconditionally, and never use that love as a bargaining chip. Grandma visited often during Noreen's pregnancy. She and Noreen had grown close, bonding over cooking and gardening and long conversations about life. Watching them together filled me with gratitude. This was my family now. Not perfect, not complete, but real. My relationship with my mom remained distant. We exchanged occasional texts, surface-level updates about life. She met Noreen briefly once when we visited Portland, and it was awkward but civil. She never apologized, and I stopped expecting her to. Some people are not capable of admitting they were wrong. I had to accept that and move on. Looking back on everything that happened, I learned something important. Family is not just about blood. It is about who shows up for you. It is about who respects you, who supports you, who loves you without conditions or ultimatums. I spent so many years trying to earn my mother's approval, trying to be good enough for a family that had already decided I was less important than my sister. Getting married forced me to confront that painful truth. But it also showed me what real love looks like. Noreen showed me. Grandma showed me. The friends and relatives who stood by us showed me. Love is not supposed to hurt. Love is not supposed to come with strings attached. Love is showing up even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. If you are going through something similar, if your family is asking you to sacrifice your happiness for someone else's comfort, I want you to know this. You have the right to protect your peace. You have the right to choose love. And sometimes walking away is not giving up. It is growing up. I still think about my dad sometimes. I wonder what he would say if he could see how things turned out. I like to believe he would be proud of me. I like to believe he would have loved Noreen. I like to believe he would have walked her down the aisle himself if he were still here. Last night, I watched Noreen sleeping beside me, her hand resting on her belly where our baby was growing. I smiled and whispered into the darkness, we made it. Outside our window, the first light of dawn was breaking through. A new day was beginning. A new chapter was unfolding. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace with family and standing up for yourself? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I would love to hear your stories. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I hope that whatever challenges you are facing in your own life, you find the strength to choose love, to protect your peace, and to never settle for less than you deserve. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.